Welcome to the show. This is the Red Hot Reds podcast, episode 2. We're going to be previewing the Cincinnati Reds infield. Hopefully, get into some talk about MVP maybe for Elly. Who knows? Ricky, you ready? Let's start the show.
Let's go.
This is the Red Hot Reds podcast. Here are your hosts, Ricky Logan and Roger Straz.
This is Ricky Logan. I'm Roger Straz. This is Red Hot Reds podcast presented by Ohio Sports Talk. Please like, subscribe, and do all the good things. We're on YouTube and Twitter. We're on Facebook. We appreciate you guys tuning in again. This is our second ever episode and also our second ever ScoreBoard Stumper presented by no one. So hopefully we get a sponsor there sometime. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But Ricky, all right. The ScoreBoard Stumper for today is about the Reds infielders. Since 2000, there have been 5 infielders, including catchers. We'll consider them infielders, even though they're their own thing, that have won the Gold Glove. Who are these 5 guys?
Let's see. Joey Votto.
Yes.
Scott Rowland.
Yes.
Brandon Phillips.
Yes. He actually won it 4 times since 2000.
Who'd I say? Votto, Rowland,
Phillips.
Barnhart.
Barnhart, yes, the catcher. Which, since I said including catchers, and got to be probably a catcher in there, right? He actually won it twice, 2017 and 2020. This last one's probably the hardest.
Does it go back to Larkin?
No, not Larkin, but a guy that played, I believe he's second baseman before Phillips.
I think you got me.
He won it in 2000. Any last chance?
I think you got me.
It's Pokey Reese.
Pokey Reese.
He actually won it twice as well, but in 1999 and 2000. So, yeah. Wow. Pokey Reese. Brandon Phillips won it 4 times, 2008, 2010, 2011, 2013. Scott Rowland, 2010. Votto, 2011. Barnhart, like I said, 17 and 20. So that's your ScoreBoard Stumper of the week, of the day, of the episode, whatever. Right, and that comes to basically what we want to try to talk about this episode is that basically these guys are outstanding defensive players, right? And it's something that kind of the Reds have been lacking. And what we hopefully will see, because if you see that the last time we won a Gold Glover on the infield, except for Tucker, I'm kind of discounting him for this, is Brandon Phillips in 2013. The second baseman in about 11 seasons ago was the last guy in the infield to have above average elite defense. And that's kind of been a thing that's been holding back the Reds in at least the last 2 seasons, it feels like, that they're making errors, making mistakes, stuff like that. One guy that has really been improving his defense is Elly De La Cruz. He's been in the talks of possibly being an MVP for the NL this year. Just Baseball, a publication that you and I both like to subscribe, like to watch or read, named him the best player in NL Central. So, Ricky, I'll put it to you. Will he, should he, could he, can Elly De La Cruz be NL MVP in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless with this kid. I mean, he can do it all. He can hit for power. He runs like the wind. He's the most electric player in recent memory for the sport. And if he can put it all together, he can he can absolutely win an MVP, and he can will this team to the playoffs.
Yeah. If you tuned in the last episode, you might have an indication of how I feel. And we talked about, I think, at the tail end of the episode last time about can Elly win the MVP in 2025. I think if you're asking, like I said, the can he win? Yeah, he can win. Will he win? Maybe not. I think, unfortunately, even if he is probably the best player in the NL, by stats or by WAR, which is, something that kind of measures how valuable a player really is. If he is the top, he has to have that team success as well. And what I said in the last episode is that my take is Elly is not going to win the MVP in 2025, but he will. I mean, I guess I'll say it. He will win it in 2026 because he will have the team, I think, behind him at that point. They will be, top of the division predictions, 90 wins plus, I think, in 2026. And I think that is going to be the year that he really shines.
Is that a hot take?
It's kind of a cold take right now because we're talking about this season, right? But like if we look at the WAR, like I was talking about Elly, and I do baseball reference WAR. Yeah, 5.2 WAR in 2024, which was top 10 for WAR for position players in the NL, and he ended up kind of matching that in the MVP votes. He ended up being 8th in MVP votes. So what I think is kind of like, I think he's on the upward trajectory. This year, I think Shohei's ahead of him. I think Ronald Acuna, who's, back and healthy, and if he has a good season, probably is ahead of him. There's the guys in the Mets, Lindor and Soto, that could be ahead of him if the Mets have a good year. So, like, top 3, top 2 maybe? I can see that. And that's possibly on a team that's in the wild card hunt. You know what I mean? If the Reds go 90 wins, for sure top 2 and maybe MVP. But, that's asking a lot from the other guys on his team.
Yeah, his stats in spring training are pretty amazing so far. He's 15 at bats. He's batting .533 with 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, and an OPS of 1.899. And he's actually performing better against left-handed pitching than he is against right-handed pitching. So early indications are he's improved pretty dramatically versus left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think? Sticking with Elly, with our defensive theme, he struggled a little bit last year. I think he led the NL in errors, or he was up there in errors, and there was a pretty big improvement towards the end of the season. I think a lot of his errors were towards the beginning. What do you think? How do you think he'll perform defensively this year?
Much like how I'm predicting his trajectory is going to go up for just MVP race, I think definitely same thing for his fielding. And if he's true to his word, what he's saying, he wants to be a better player every single day. He wants to help the Reds win. I think this might be his really kind of his biggest weakness because he can hit for power. He can hit, not necessarily for average, but I don't know if we can get into the analytics talk that maybe average is kind of overrated, but he can hit for OPS, right? He can get, that the power numbers up. He can fly around the bases. I think fielding is kind of the tool that he's kind of weakest, if you can say. But even with that, he's still, according to, Baseball Savant, he's above average out, 19 or 15 outs above average, which puts him in like the 98th percentile of defense.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird dichotomy, right? When we talk about the advanced stats, that he can be an way above average fielder, but make mistakes. So it's kind of like, the old heads would probably say, if he can cut his errors in half and still be that 15 outs above average fielder, he'd be probably a Gold Glove candidate and be able to kind of not only make himself just a valuable player at the plate, but a valuable player for saving runs for that defense. And, maybe those one-run games like we talked about last episode, it can be flipped on its head because not just Elly's defense, but I think it's a team defense kind of thing. But if he's the one kind of being that lead by example, that I'm going to be the guy that is going to be accountable and cut down my errors, make sure that I'm fielding the ball cleanly and making the routine play and not losing focus. I mean, like you were saying, sky's the limit there. Because if he can kind of shore up that aspect that we kind of perceive as his weakest, I mean, he's got the strongest arm in Major League Baseball. Like, there's no doubt about it. I think, we'll get into Noel Marte as well. They both have some of the strongest arms in the NL Central by far. Just a matter of kind of making sure they make the play and get the outs. Because, I'll probably say this multiple times and everybody can make fun of me, but like it's 27 outs. You get 27 outs, and you try not to give away 27 outs, and that's kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, it's funny how like you said, his outs above average is in a 98th percentile. Because if you think about it, his speed and his ability to get to the ball really makes up for any error that he has. He might snag a ball that might go towards the gap and maybe miss the first baseman, but he still only gets a single out of it as opposed to hitting a triple in the gap. So his defense, I kind of see a Barry Larkin trajectory, because if I remember correctly, Barry led or was at least near the top of the league in errors his first couple seasons, and then he really became one of the best shortstops in Reds history. Do you see a Gold Glove in Elly's future?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how soon, because there's guys, that they're on the roster on the Major League roster because they're elite defenders. I think Elly is always going to be, unless he's having an off day, he's always going to be penciled in at short. I think that's just kind of the way that I think Francona wants to just know that he's there in the lineup, hitting second or third and playing short. So there's a consistency there. So maybe not this year. Maybe we're doing this again. Maybe I'm doing this take again. 2026, he's going to be, leader in steals, leader in OPS plus, leader in, Gold Glove statistics. So maybe he's going to bring it all home and then get the MVP to cap off the 2026 World Series for the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, I think my hot take with Elly is I believe he will contend for a Triple Crown one year.
Yeah, he's got the tools. There's no doubt about it.
So we've got shortstop pretty well locked up with Elly. What about third base? Who do you got? I know we have Noel Marte probably going to start the year in AAA. We acquired Gavin Lux from the Dodgers. We have Christian Encarnacion-Strand, Jeimer Candelario. Who in your mind would you have if it was your team? Who are you penciling in at third base?
I think maybe this is the reason why we have spring training, even though a lot of the games don't matter. We're throwing guys out there to make sure they don't get hurt by just playing them a couple innings each time. But I think what I saw in a piece by the beat writer for the Reds, Mark Sheldon, is that Francona's spring training has been really, really honing in on drills and focusing defensive drills and base running drills and all like kind of the foundational stuff. And there's less meetings than I guess the David Bell era of spring training. So they're getting out there, they're putting in the work. The guy that reports have been coming back that says that's really been putting in the work has been Jeimer Candelario at third. They said, the typical best shape of my life stuff, which maybe he cut out pizza in the off season, or you know what I mean? Like he stopped, having that, ice cream late at night or something. I don't know. It could be something that where he's just really honed in because he saw last year coming out of the gates in April, May at like hitting 100 and basically kind of going back into a platoon where he wasn't an everyday guy for the Reds. And even though he was the big, free agent signing, 3 years, $45 million, I like to think he is the one that is going to try to step up to the plate to be that opening day third baseman. So I don't know if I would say that for my team, I would want him to be the everyday third baseman. But if he's the one that's putting in the work and he's showing, every single day that he can be serviceable at third, and he can also combine that with some, power hitting at that third base position, I think it might be his position to lose.
Yeah, I think Charlie Goldsmith reported that Christian Encarnacion Strand is blowing people away at first base and third base. I agree with you. I think I would probably have Candelario start at third right away, but I think Encarnacion Strand and his youth, he's sneaky athletic. I don't think he gets enough credit for his athleticism. People just see a big guy and they're like, "Oh, first baseman." But I went to a game towards the end of 2023, and he started at third, and he played pretty well. So, and like you said, showed up to camp, best shape of his life, and he looks noticeably thinner. Um, I might lean towards CES starting at third just to kind of take the load off Candelario and maybe throw him at first or maybe even DH, depending on the Spencer Steer situation. But yeah, I mean, Encarnacion Strand he's that power hitter you desire, and Candelario can be that guy too. But CES, I think I'm going with him at third base. Where do you think Gavin Lux fits in with this?
Yeah, I was just thinking about him. If it's for me, if it's not Candelario at third, I think it's got to be Lux. I really like CES at first. I know he's younger and possibly more athletic than those two guys we just mentioned, Lux and Candelario. I really kind of vision hopefully his permanent position down the road for CES will be at first. We could talk about that down the road about one of the other subjects that we're going to get to today. But I think Gavin Lux, I like his numbers better than Candelario and CES. He had a much better season last year. I was just also kind of just looking overall what the Reds' WAR numbers were. They were, except for like Tyler Stevenson, Elly, I think maybe Friedel, everyone was negative WAR for the season.
Yeah.
So, like, we're talking about below replacement players. You could just put in anybody, and they would be better than Candelario was, better than Marte was, better than, Fraley. It was just kind of a season of there, Elly, Stevenson, Hunter and Lodolo were just kind of carrying the team, and Martinez were kind of carrying the team who were not playing up to their expectations, to put it bluntly. So with Lux, he comes from the Dodgers. He has a pretty good pedigree. He knows, how to play winning baseball being in that organization. And his numbers back it up where he's, a 2.1 WAR last season. And his one thing that's not like kind of, he's kind of a second baseman. So like, and we'll touch on this with McLain later, but I don't think that Gavin Lux is going to be beating out McLain for the second baseman spot. So he kind of has to get in where he fits in, and third base might be where he fits in because he has that left-handed at bat as well that's valuable in the lineup where you can break up lefty righty, or if there's a matchup that favors him a lot better than say CES. So like having him just kind of in the club, he probably doesn't want to be coming off the bench or being a platoon guy, but I think his value has to be maximized. And hopefully with, the guy like Francona as manager, he knows where to put him in where to hopefully, possibly maximize his value for this team, because I don't think, if Lux is on the bench 5 out of 7 days of the week, hopefully, it's because all the other guys are killing it, in the infield, and Lux is just, a surplus to utilities, where he's just kind of like, hey, I'll come off the bench, I'll pinch hit or whatever. But I think that if they really want to maximize his contributions, he needs to be in the lineup, and I think third base might be the spot for him if Candelario comes out slow again, CES isn't, bouncing back. I think it's kind of a smart position that the Reds took when they traded for him, to basically like say, hey, we want you in the building, we want you in the organization, we're gonna play you. We just gotta have to kind of figure out where.
Yeah, one person we're leaving off this list is Noelvi Marte. I was listening to Nick Kirby and Trace Fowler of Chatterbox Sports, and Trace had a pretty off-the-wall idea, but I agree with him.
Oh, you heard that? That was today, right? I heard that too.
Yeah, he said, I would start the kid in Dayton and just let him absolutely tear the cover off the ball and get his confidence up. I would hate for that to come to that, but if it was to work, I think Marte has the most potential out of all of them. I see so much with Marte. I've always said I see Manny Machado type play out of him. He might not hit as much for power, but he's got gap power. And in 2023, like, we saw the player he can be. And he was excellent defensively. He was tearing the cover off the ball. He ended the season on like an 18-game hitting streak.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he had the injury in the Mexican League and gets popped for PEDs. And then I don't think PEDs made him the player he was. I think it all comes down to confidence. It's like basketball. You miss 10 shots, you hit a free throw, and then you can go on a streak and hit 20 shots in a row. So I would lean towards agreeing with Trace. I would start him in Dayton, and I would just let him absolutely destroy the ball, because he has done absolutely nothing to show me otherwise.
Yeah, I feel like he could do the same thing at AAA. I don't know if we need to send him down to Dayton for. I think he's just trying to drastically help his confidence. I think we get it's hopefully not the Connor Phillips type situation where he kind of has to go way back to the basics, and do like Arizona Fall League type stuff. But yeah, I get the sentiment. I like to think he can do that at Louisville and just build the confidence there, because we might get into this talk about prospects down the road that, Cam Collier and Sal Stewart are probably going to be at AA. So you don't want to hinder their growth at third potentially by kind of putting Marte in the way in some sort of, fashion. But yeah, if anything, hopefully at Louisville or wherever he ends up, he'll get that confidence back and be ready to help the major league ball clubs sooner than later.
Yeah. Transitioning, one guy that I'm not too worried about, but you never know. Matt McLain. Recently, Francona, like you said, has shown that McLain is going to be basically the everyday second baseman. Are you concerned at all with him not playing at all last year and being rusty to start the season out?
A little bit, but not too much, because he had a tremendous Arizona Fall League, from what I remember, and that was kind of the first sign of like, okay, like he's healthy for one, for two, he can hit the ball still, and it's not like he's, hopefully, the spring training, I think he's been hitting, 300 at least. They're playing right now, I think, as we're recording, against his brother against the Dodgers, so maybe, he'll have some, good moments tonight in front of his brother and family and whatever. But he definitely is a guy that is key to this offense and defense. I think him and Elly have a great understanding. They seem to be, like the movie with Schwarzenegger and DeVito, like twins. You know what I mean? So
Batman and Robin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, how the Batman and Robin stuff that came out for sure. And I think what he does, well, is kind of what Elly does, and he hits for average, and he's a solid defender, and doesn't have the blazing speed, but he's able to get out on the base pass and run too. So I just feel like they're a great combination up the middle, and obviously Francona agrees because he feels like the middle infield set, and it's not. I don't think any insult to Lux. It's not insult to Espinal or any other guy that may potentially play the middle infield during the season. It's just sometimes I think in baseball, especially these guys that are huge on routines, if they know where they're batting in the lineup every day, they know where they're starting every day, they have, kind of like a confidence in there that the manager knows, hey, I'm the guy for this position. I'm the guy that's going to, play here. And hopefully, McLain can have that bounce back season. Another Just Baseball shout out. They named him one of the top 10 NL guys to bounce back this year. So it's not just us that are high on McLain having a good season. I think a lot of people around baseball see his value for this Reds team.
Yeah, I mean he's a phenomenal player, and you couldn't ask for a better player to have such great chemistry with Elly. I think that was really drastically missed last year. Like you said in our last episode, I'm not making any knock towards Jonathan India. He's a serviceable second baseman, but Matt McLain is just another level better. He's performing well in spring training. He's batting 350. He's got a home run. He's got an OPS of 1,000. He's a career 290 hitter. He's got 16 home runs. Like, he can get the job done. I have all the faith in Matt McLain. I'm concerned about his health. He missed all of 2024. He missed the last month and a half, almost 2 months of 23. I like Elly said, Batman and Robin, like that could be national media type play with them two. Like they remind me, the chemistry of them remind me so much of Joey Votto and Brandon Phillips. They knew where each other were at all times, and they're so good, and they have so much potential to grow. And I'm just really excited that they're both Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, for sure. We're hoping that them two specifically, and some of the other guys that we've mentioned so far this show and the past shows, are going to be there 10 years and retire Reds. You know what I mean? Like it's those kind of players that you don't, obviously you hope that. I think bare minimum for this season, I think the goal for like a CES, a Marte, and like a McLain for me is like they play 100 games. Like if they hit the 100 game mark, relatively healthy, like I think they'll be, the Reds will have a decent season. Is kind of the indicator, right? If we're going into like game 100 and McLain and CES have only played like 30, 40, 50 games, Marte played that like half the season at that point, it's going to be rough, I feel. Just because you'll have to platoon other guys in that position. You're going to be seeing Santiago Espinal a lot more type of thing. And I think if we can have those guys play at least that many games this season or get to the 100 game mark and they're playing a majority of the season, I think we'll be in a decent spot.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk projections at all, but what do you see offensively for McLain for this year? Do you think he has a slow start? Do you think he gets out rolling because he's playing pretty well in spring and he had a great fall league? Do you think he starts out good and maybe kind of fizzles out, or do you think he starts out cold and gets hot?
My general philosophy is like, there's always a lot of guys that hit well, in the Arizona Fall League in spring training because the weather is just perfect for hitters,
Yeah.
right? And you go to Cincinnati in late March, early April, and it goes from sometimes opening day is like 60 degrees and sunny, and sometimes it's 30 degrees and raining, and maybe even snowing, and sometimes you just it's hard to hit, and the pitchers are ready to go at that point because a lot of the pitchers are healthy and they don't have the innings on them yet. So I think generally guys that come out slow, I don't hold it too much against them. Like unless it's a prolonged situation like Candelario last year. I feel they have a decent start to this year. If we're healthy with that, projected starting lineup that we're going to get to soon, I think he'll have a decent start to the season. Do I think he'll be hitting 400 and knocking in, RBIs left and right? Nah, I can't see that right now. I think a slow start is totally understandable for missing a whole season in 2024 and just kind of playing off of hopefully, Elly's. I feel like Elly, since he's had that second full season under his belt, he might be the guy that's going to come out roaring, and Matt McLain can kind of follow his lead a little bit. 250. If he's hitting 250 by the end of April, I'm not upset. If he's hitting 150, there's some concerns. Hopefully he's healthy still at that point, and there's not some sort of issue where he, in his shoulder like before, right? So that's the thing I'm kind of watching out for. I'm not too overly concerned if he's, not the player of the month because he's coming back to Major League Baseball after missing for so long. But at the same time, I don't want him to be in that candy area where it's, oof, you know what I mean? So what do you think? Where do you feel that McLain will kind of end up?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards what you're saying. I think that if he's hitting, let's just say 230 or higher, that's probably good. I just
Like it.
like you said, you miss an entire season in another 2 months, and to be expected to come out and bat, your career line of 290 or higher, it's a lot to ask somebody who really is going to be playing a second season, what should be his third, but it's really a second season. I'm just trying to hamper expectations on Red's social media. I know how if he's gonna bat 230, we got to trade him. We got to trade him. Get value for him now. We got to trade him. So just pump the brakes a little bit if he's not, all-star coming out the gates.
Yeah.
Another player missed some time last year. Didn't really play well at all. Christian Encarnacion Strand. What are your expectations for the three-letter man?
CES. Yeah, more along the lines of I feel like CES more than anything needs a position to kind of be consistent. I don't want to jinx him in any way, but I kind of feel like the way that they've thrown it, and it's been not a lot, you know what I mean? Because he hasn't been up with the ball club for that long, but they put him in 2023 and a little bit into 2024, at first, at third, in the outfield. I kind of want him to not have the Nick Senzel experience where they're just trying to find a position for him. My gut is that because he's projected to be this power hitter, you said he slimmed down, but Joey Votto slimmed down as well, and I think that possibly worked out for him in his swing as well. It was like the 2018, 2019, around that time. And if CES can find a home to be every day or majority of the season, hopefully first base, like our graphics suggesting, I think that is the biggest thing. Not to again, we feel like we're tempering expectations left and right, but if he's hitting 250 as well at the end of April, and he's playing consistently May 1st, feels like they'll probably throw him around at third as well, based on maybe how the other guys are doing. And maybe even get Lux at first sometimes just to get him at bats or DH. I think that's not the worst thing to be. And I know it's kind of like we're kind of feel like setting up ourselves, just as fans, both you and I, like, oh, if the Reds stink in April, it's okay. But like last year, I think, or the last year, last year they had their first winning April in like 15 years, and then they followed it up with a terrible May. So I don't want them to have like a terrible April and have a better May. I would like them to be around 500 for both of those, going into Cincinnati Reds' favorite month of the year, June, and catch fire when it starts to get warmer and the bats start to get warmer and the young guys start to feel like they could play looser. You know what I mean? That's kind of the biggest thing. So my expectation for CES is just try to find a home to know where he's going to be in the lineup, position wise as well, and then hopefully at that point his confidence kind of soars and grows, and he'll get back to that player that we saw and was projected in the end of 2023 going into 2024.
Yeah, he's not hitting for average right now in spring training, but he is absolutely destroying the ball. I think I saw a stat. It was top 3 in exit velocity. He had a max exit velocity of 114 miles an hour. So he absolutely ripped baseballs. Encarnacion Strand, to me, he could be the Reds' best hitter. I think he's hit at every level, and I think last year the wrist injury really, I think it was there before many people knew it was there. I think the signs were there. He just wasn't hitting the ball. If he could put it together, he could be a 300 hitter, 45 home run guy, and that's prototypical first baseman, and that's where I would like to see him. I would prefer, like you said, to keep him in one spot. Don't move him around. Don't go with the Nick Senzel experience, because I think that really messed him up in the long run too, because Senzel was a lot better than what he ended up being. But yeah, like Encarnacion Strand, he's a career 243 hitter. He's got 15 home runs, but I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of his home runs are clutch home runs. Like he had a walk-off home run against the Blue Jays. He had the walk-off home run against the Nationals in the opening day weekend. He's a fun player. He lights up your StatCast stats. Like he's awesome. He's just. I'd like to see him at first, keep him at first, and just
Yeah, for sure. He's part of that, the 2023 call-up class where, you'd like to see all these guys, McLain, Elly, him, Marte, all kind of like gel together. And I think someone I know most recently put that they could be the Big Red Machine. if I'm
who that guy was.
Yeah, so if they can be on the cusp all-stars and build on that kind of success, I mean, they'd be fantastic for the organization to kind of point to the philosophy of like we build our guys homegrown. I mean, it's good to get a veteran like Candelario there that can be the voice of reason and have that experience and have that pop, but Encarnacion Strand becomes a player that he's intended, or he was projected to be. This team looks, top to bottom lineup looks pretty strong.
And speaking of lineup, where do you see your opening day infield starters?
Yeah, mine's a little bit different than the graphic. I think I have Candelario at third instead of Lux, but it's all pretty much the same. I don't think we're going to have a David Bell, Frankie Montas situation where clearly Hunter Green's the best pitcher on the staff, and all of a sudden Terry Francona is going to be like, Nick Martinez, hey, March 27th. I think it's Hunter, like it says. Unless something happens that he gets set back for some reason, but there's no indication of that. He's not having the best spring, but just like how you can read into how great Elly and McLain and all these guys are hitting, Austin Hayes. It's like, I think pitching starts to be a little bit, has the advantage when you start going back north, and you start getting into situations where he's going to be locked in to pitch, 6, 7, 8 innings on opening day. He's not just going out there for 2 innings just to get some work in type of mentality. So, but yeah, I think we got CES at first. That's where I'd like to see him too. And then, yeah, I guess, Stevenson behind the plate, no doubt about it. Depending on the relationship those two have, they should have a strong one. I don't mind having also Stevenson at DH and Trevino behind the plate, as we well documented. I guess I like defensive catchers so far. Trevino has been, I think a solid pickup, but Stevenson at catcher, he's well improved as well. There's no doubt about it. This infield with, Candelario, if he's in the best shape of he's ever been, I think it's pretty solid. And, I was listening to a show that was talking about that the Reds need to kind of find an identity. They don't have kind of a thing that when you say the Cincinnati Reds, that's the identity. And I think the infield can be that identity. Like you talk about Elly, who's leading the charge on that, is clearly the best player. And like we touched on, Just Baseball thinks he's the best player in the NL Central. Why not, like McLain could be that next guy, the Robin to his Batman. Candelario can bounce back and be the player that he was 2 years ago. And, CES starts to come into his own. It seems like the infield should be like the identity of this ball club because they seem to have all the tools there. They seem to have, the potential to be basically the best hitters and the best, part of the lineup that, why not the Reds infield being kind of the face of the team. The pitching, I'd say, was probably the identity last year, but, pitching can kind of be hard to replicate year on year. But if you got the defense behind you, hopefully they can take that step up, be above average replacement players in the defensive infield. That helps your pitching. It'll save runs and be able to kind of help out your, overall, ball club if you can have that type of defense behind your pitching.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would really maybe watch out for is I think Hunter Green likes working with his person, like having a personal catcher. So I could see him maybe having Trevino be his personal catcher because of framing and everything with that. Because me and you talked earlier, Trevino is one of the best framing catchers in all of baseball, and you can't put a price on a good defensive catcher. And Stevenson's good. He's not great. I think he's technically below average defensively as a catcher, but I think his offense kind of makes up for the lack of catching ability, which is kind of like how you said. I'd like to see him maybe play at DH a little bit more, and maybe throw him at first to give a guy a day off here and there. Maybe I don't want to see him play first more than like 10 games a year. Yeah, I think Encarnacion Strand at first, Matt McLain. Going back to Matt McLain, would you, and this is probably a stretch, but based off of his play, if we were projecting 2024, would you say that he's the best second baseman in the NL Central?
Oh, it's tough because Nico Horner of the Cubs, he's a second base, right?
Yeah.
It might be Nico Horner, I would say, because he's a little more seasoned. second baseman, and even if McLain had a full season last year, but he's right there. And the reason why I say he's right there is because he missed all of last year, and on Just Baseball's top 10 NL Central players, he's outside looking in. So he missed a whole year, and he's already the 11th best player in the NL Central. So, I mean, that's not including pitchers. It was just field position players, I think. And, I mean, he's definitely – he's got a lot of people singing his praises. Let's hope he stays healthy and can be that Robin to Elly's Batman, and be able to have a solid 2025. I can't imagine that if he doesn't play at least 100 games or more, that the Reds are going to be having a bad year.
Yeah, I'd pencil him in at second. Elly, obviously shortstop. Maybe if you're going to mix some things up, he might play at third a game or two to put McLain at short and maybe put Lux at second. Just maybe in a pinch if something happens with somebody else. I think we're playing the Giants. I don't know who their starter is going to be. I would probably lean that it probably would be a right-handed pitcher.
Mm.
That's why I kind of lean towards Lux a little bit. I think not pictured. I think DH would be Candelario. But yeah, I mean, if you were putting an order to the batting order, I know we're talking defense, but if you were to put a batting order together, I guess we can include the outfielders on this one. Who's your 1 through 9?
Yeah, I think the lineup they kind of threw out tonight in the spring training game is kind of close to it. I sent it to you. It seemed like their A squad, which I think if I remember correctly, 1 through 9 was center TJ Friedel, batting second. I want to say, no, I'm forgetting. Let's look. It's either Elly or McLain, and
Friedel, McLain, Elly, Hayes, Fraley, Encarnacion, Strand, Marte, Wins, Fairchild.
Yeah, and in the positions that I kind of somewhat set up, aside from Marte and Wins, I think Fairchild's in there because we're unsure of what Spencer Steer is going to look like in March 27th. But yeah, like Friedel, McLain, De La Cruz at short. Hayes, I guess, could go into that left field spot for Fairchild if we got who do I have for right? Yeah, Benson. No, Fraley. So yeah, that's kind of like we can interchange the outfield, and we're probably going to talk more about the outfield, in the coming days. But I think the Friedel, McLain, Elly, Stevenson, CES type of first 5, first 4 out the gate kind of has to be the way to go. Those are the guys that have been hitting decently well this spring, and you throw in Austin Hayes in left or right, and I think that's a good top 6, and you kind of fill in the rest with catcher and DH and figure out kind of the rest from there. But I think that's at least a decent start. I know it doesn't feel like that lineup's going to win 90 games right now, but we're asking March 27th, and I've been kind of echoing the thoughts of what Terry Francona thinks about opening day. And I don't know if you heard all his interviews on that, but he was talking about he kind of looks forward to opening day being over. Not that he doesn't enjoy the experience, doesn't enjoy the tradition and everything. And obviously the Reds do it best, if anything, all across the U.S. to having kind of the biggest party for opening day. But he was talking about how it's such a big buildup for just one game. And unfortunately, the next day it's a day off. So you kind of have to sit with either the expectations of we won one game, now we're going to go 162-0, or you lose the game and you feel like all the fans are thinking you're going to go 0-162. Yeah. So I kind of feel the same way of we're going to definitely have that lineup prediction down the road in one of our pods, and hopefully we'll nail all the 26-man roster as well with our expert picking that we can do. But at the same time, like, what I'd like to see is like those 6 guys that I just mentioned are also the same 6 guys batting in August and September and have, 80 plus wins and more potentially at that time, so they can kind of like round out the year. It's kind of the adage of like, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And I think the 2021 Braves are kind of like the huge example of that. They were way out of the race and made some trades before the deadline and finished the year crazy strong finish and ended up winning the World Series that year. So I feel like a theme of this episode has been like, hey, Reds fans, if we're 10-15 in April, don't worry. But
Yeah.
I really think that, like, the bigger picture is that we want a ball club that's going to be, feared and have like a lineup that's feared and have guys that are like CES that you come up to the plate. You can't throw anything by him because, basically he's going to, take your yard, or you can't really pitch around any guys because after you get through McLain, you got Elly and then you got Stevenson and all that. So like, I guess the biggest takeaway is that we hopefully for our lineup will be consistent and be the guys that we think can have the highest ceiling, hitting or at least getting close to those ceilings throughout the 2025 season.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I would like to see Friedel either lead off or bat ninth, just because I think batting ninth is basically your second leadoff man. Um, I like Friedel leading off. You could interchange McLain and Elly. I think you could make the argument that putting Elly ahead of McLain might benefit Elly to a degree, but then if you put Encarnacion Strand behind Elly, it's like if you sandwich him in between McLain and Encarnacion Strand, that's just who do you pitch to? That's a pitcher's nightmare. Um, Stevenson, he's had a really, I'd say, his best season offensively last year since his rookie year. Just he was healthy, showed some power, and you know, numbers might not show it, but I think he improved defensively also. Um, yeah, and then Fraley, I think Fraley had a really rough year last year, and we'll talk more about outfielders in our next episode. But Fraley, I really felt bad for him with everything he had to go through last year, and I think I would pencil him in ahead of Benson. I know Benson's destroying the ball in spring training, but I'd like to see him get his confidence similar to how he did in 2023, where he was basically left stranded to be this terrible offensive player, and people deem it, oh, you got sent down to AAA, you're not any good, but he went to AAA, got his confidence, and he was the Reds' second best hitter all of 2023. And if you can get him later in the year and he can hit like anywhere near how he was in 2023, that just adds a crazy dynamic to that lineup. And I think uh, Austin Hayes is a really sneaky move. I think that they got him really cheap, and I think I think if he can be healthy, I think he's going to be a pretty dangerous hitter in that lineup. And yeah, I mean, if you can sandwich CES, McLain, and Elly in any order, whoever's in the middle is just going to benefit. So I'd like to see 2, 3, and 4 in any order: McLain, Elly, and Encarnacion Strand, and then Candelario. I think he's got way more power than he showed last year. I mean, he was what, third on the team in home runs, and he missed a month and a half, and he was battling a knee injury. And Candelario to me I think he's comeback player of the year for the team, not for the National League, but I think he's comeback player of the year worthy for the team.
Yeah.
Just because he's got that experience, he's been there, he's done that, he's played. I think he's his 8th season. I think he's Yeah, he's a really good player that I think he's due to bounce back, and I think Great American Ballpark for him is a really good ballpark. He's a pretty pretty decent splits switch hitting, and I think that too. I mean, we have two switch hitters in our lineup. That just adds a dynamic that not many teams have, and I think if Elly can improve facing left-handed pitching, I mean, the sky's the limit for what they have, and then to boot prospects they have coming up. I mean, it's just I don't know, man. Like who is there any prospects that you see that could potentially I don't want to say crack the opening day lineup, but maybe gets called up maybe close to the All-Star break?
Yeah, it might be before the All-Star break. I think we talked about this a little bit beforehand. Cooper Bowman, the Rule 5 draft pick, and he's already 25 years old and has had experience playing. It feels like he could be a guy they just throw in there. He's kind of a utility guy, kind of in the mold of Spencer Steer, second base, third base, outfield type of situation. So I feel like if there is some guys that are struggling, I ideally when we get the 26 man roster right before opening day, like we talked about, Noelve, Louder, Benson will all be in AAA to start, just so we have like those horses ready to go if we need them. Kind of same thing with Cooper. You know, to probably it depends on the season is going, but I mean, guys like Collier and Sal Stewart will be in AA is what they're projecting. So I don't necessarily want to see them this year. It'd have to be some sort of situation where things are kind of going badly, or injuries, or just season's not going well, and guys are not performing, and pieces get traded, things of that nature. So I think kind of much like Louder and Marte and Benson staying in the minors, those guys keep developing. They're still, both of those still young, 20 and 21 years old or something like that, I think, for Collier and Stewart. Like, those are guys, I think, reading your pieces, those are guys for 2026, which is starting to shape up my favorite year already, and it hasn't even we haven't even started 2025, the season. So what are you looking at for the prospects?
I think someone to keep an eye on would be Tyler Callahan. I think he was added to the 40 man to keep him off the Rule 5 draft. He's got pretty good like gap hitting. He can hit to the gaps. He's not your crazy power hitter, but he can get on base relatively decent, and I think he's someone that could be that defensive player that can make an impact. Maybe not for the long term, but I think he could be a guy that could really maybe help, I guess, benefit McLain or benefit Elly, because he plays second base. I think he could, if something was to happen with Lux or McLain, because they have a track record with injuries, maybe he could be a guy that could fill in. As much as I love Cam Collier and Sal Stewart, 2025 is just not the year. I think he's probably. I think Tyler Callahan is probably the most likely. Him with Cooper Bowman are probably the two most likely to really maybe snag a spot.
Yeah, definitely can see that, no doubt. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the 26 man roster, and much like kind of panned David Bell with his Montas pick. Hopefully, we're not in any Bubba Thompson territory as the 26th man. Salute to Bubba Thompson. I think he went back to college to play collegiate football, so good luck to him. He's got the wheels. We all know. But yeah, I mean, we definitely want some value of that 26 pick. That's more than just kind of one dimensional players, especially because we got dynamic players already at the big league ball club. We want to replace them if they get injured or need some time off with more dynamic players.
Yeah, no doubt. And you want to find out what we think about outfield prospects, subscribe to Ohio Sports Talk on YouTube and check out our episode 3 where we dive into the Reds outfield. And this is a fun, exciting season. I think I'm going to keep saying it. It doesn't feel real that Terry Francona is the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. So that right there is enough to get me fired up. And I don't know if you saw his recent quote where he was saying, we want to win every damn game. I'm like, oh, fire me up, Tito. Fire me up.
Yeah. It's hope season for sure. Everyone's trafficking in hope because, everyone's 0-0. And if we happen to lose against San Francisco, then we're going 0-162, I guess. And then everyone's firing everyone, and everyone's calling for everyone's head at that point. And Nick Krall's an idiot and all that good stuff.
I always get crawled whenever he makes the right move.
Yeah.
Which underrated. He's made some fantastic trades. I mean, you get Encarnacion Strand, Chase Petty, Spencer Steer, all with expiring contract pitchers, and then I'm not selling on Noelvi Marte yet. I'm not selling on Chase Petty. It's unfortunate that Brandon Williamson got hurt towards the end of last year. I mean, he missed most of the season and then came back and then tore his UCL. It's unfortunate. I think Williamson has potential to be a really solid 4th or 5th starter for the team. I was harping, man. I was saying that Nick Krall should have been executive of the year for 23. Just all the moves he made and all the prospects that he signed and called him up at the right time. I mean, because there was waves, like McLain came up in May, they got hot. And then just when they started to cool down a little bit, here comes Elly De La Cruz, and he sparks that team to a 12-game winning streak. And then Votto comes back from injury, and then Christian Encarnacion Strand comes up, win a couple more games. Unfortunately, I think the injuries to the rotation really got to us in 23. But yeah, tune in next week. We'll have our outfield projections. We're going to talk about who's your starting left fielder. What do you do with Will Benson? So yeah, subscribe, Ohio Sports Talk, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching the Red Hot Reds podcast, presented to you by Ohio Sports Talk.